Philadelphia Phillies failed to reach their World Series aspirations once again this season, and some big changes could be on the horizon. This is what former general manager Ruben Amaro seems to believe while speaking this week on the radio. I want to break down exactly what was said, who he could possibly be talking about, and what the future does have in store for this Phillies team that has failed to get over the mountaintop in 4 consecutive playoffs. So let's get right into the video here, and do ultimately want to start off with just the quote that did set the internet on fire a little bit here. This coming from Ruben Amaro Jr., who's talking with, shout out to WIP's Devin Caney. Love Devin Caney there, does an awesome job. And the tweet from the Sports Radio WIP account states, former Phillies general manager Ruben Amaro Jr. on with Devin Caney this weekend when asked about a potential surprise Phillies moves during the offseason. Quote, "You may see one of the big contracts moved." And Devin says, like a Trey Turner contract? And Ruben Amaro says, "I'm just telling you, the big contracts, that's all I'll say." Now, I do put a little bit of credence into Amaro's, general thought process and opinions here, given that he was the guy leading this organization for several seasons and has built up some really impressive baseball teams. It is a bizarre career trajectory to basically go from general manager to working in radio, talking about that specific team. But nonetheless, this is where he sits. Now, when saying that, my honest reaction to this initial clip is I thought he was making this about Nick Castellanos and trying to make it sound like a bigger deal than was honestly the case. But he did go on to elaborate a little bit farther on his own podcast here and made it clear that it was not Nick Castellanos, because what he said here was, even if the Phillies were to pay down a portion of Castellanos' $20 million salary for 2026, what could the Phillies expect to receive in a Castellanos trade? And Ruben Amaro says, quote, "Nothing. Not much. You could get like the 30th ranked prospect in somebody's organization, 18th, 20th. And he continues on to state a little bit more. Amaro suggested the Phillies front office is well aware of what it would take to trade him at this stage of his career. Next season will mark the last year of Castellanos' 5-year, $100 million contract. Quote, "They'd be willing to eat a lot of Castellanos' salary," Amaro said of the Phillies. "I think they'd be willing to eat 10, 12 million. The reality is, if you look at his numbers, obviously he didn't have a great offensive year and his defense is questionable, all that other stuff. What would be his value today on the open marketplace? What would somebody pay him? 7 million, 8 million, 9 million, 4 million? I don't know." The Phillies were eliminated in Game 4 of the National League Division Series by the Los Angeles Dodgers last week with an aging core led by Bryce Harper, Trey Turner, and pending free agent Kyle Schwarber. It's reasonable to expect plenty of changes to the Phillies roster this offseason. Now, the problem with that exact theology and thought process here is it's difficult to do. That when you dive into the specifics of you're committed to these guys, that is the point of long-term contracts. And by the way, any conversations having to do with Bryce Harper and Trey Turner are simply dumb at this point. For starters, there's been a lot of stupid stuff said about Bryce Harper this year. Now, Bryce Harper came up small in the playoffs this year, and you better believe Bryce Harper would be the first person to throw his hand in the air and say that himself. That does not change the fact that he's been the tone setter for this organization, the face of the organization, the guy that has changed the entire culture. And by the way, while battling a few injuries this year, still knocked in 27 home runs, 75 RBIs, a .357 on base percentage, had a 131 hits in his 501 at-bats. And if that is not good enough for you, let's take a look at these playoff stats for Bryce Harper in particular. That shout out to this guy tweeting now, since 2015, 87 players have batted 100 plus times in the postseason. Of those 87, Kyle Schwarber has the 9th highest OPS. Bryce Harper has the highest OPS at 1.016. No player hits well in every postseason series they play. Is it true that Bryce Harper was not good enough in these playoffs? Absolutely. Is it true that we should trade Bryce Harper? Absolutely not. And again, this is a point that should not matter because Bryce Harper controls his entire destiny. That was the point of him coming to Philadelphia in the first place. He said, "I want no opt-outs. I want a no trade clause. I want to ensure that I am finishing my career in Philadelphia." And by the way, Trey Turner, a full no trade clause as well. Zack Wheeler and Aaron Nola also on this list with the 10 and 5 rights. And I did want to bring up Aaron Nola in that conversation because that is a point that could make some sense for me. Now, Nola obviously controls his future because of that, and then has to do with the years of service there. If we're actually mapping out the way to improve this Phillies team, or what is the best pathway forward, it does make me wonder if they could try and look to get off that long-term Aaron Nola money. Let's just walk through the thought process here. Say you can find a taker that wants Aaron Nola, can trade him away. That then opens up money. Maybe you pay Ranger Suarez with that. And then you're talking about a rotation with Christopher Sanchez very clearly ready to be the ace of this team, with Zack Wheeler, whenever he's back, ready to be right neck and neck with Sanchez right there. Then Ranger, a clear number 3. You can still bring up Andrew Painter if you're ready. And then Jesus Luzardo also in the mixer. That is a very good pitching staff. Again, Nola controls the destiny, which makes this entire thought process really difficult to walk through. And that kind of brings us to the biggest point about this Phillies team. They are a very good baseball team. They are still going to be in the mix for World Series contention next year, even if it does not feel like it is in its current state. Is it frustrating that they failed to ultimately hoist that trophy again this year? Absolutely. Should we burn things to the ground and be ready to start over? No, that's not the answer either. That you're still committed to these guys. That you still have, when looking at the long-term contracts for each of these names, that you have Bryce Harper under contract until 2031. Trey Turner right alongside him there. Aaron Nola just 1 year right before that. And you can see the long-term years that I am talking about. But if we are speaking about a big money contract in the way that Ruben Amaro is bringing up, I don't really see the other options on the board. That it is essentially those 4 top names with Zack Wheeler, Trey Turner, Bryce Harper, and Aaron Nola there. JT, obviously a free agent, and that's going to be a discussion that we're going to get into. Nick Castellanos, could that possibly be the case? And I will note here, I'm not as anti-Nick Castellanos as I think the general consensus is. He's not a perfect baseball player. There's no doubt about this. And this was one of the worst years of his career statistically, certainly his worst in a Phillies uniform. Lowest batting average, lowest on-base percentage. You can go down the list. The OPS was the lowest that it has been since he's put on red pinstripes there. I do kind of give him a little bit of the benefit of the doubt that knee injury is worse than he's let on. That's one of the first things that he brought up in his post-game presser following that elimination matchup there. The thing that I will always say about Nick Castellanos, he's going to give you everything he's got, man. And I understand that there's limitations with that. He's slow as molasses. He's slower than any professional athlete can be. He does not cover a ton of ground in right field, and he did not hit for enough power this year. It was a bad season, but I don't think it was a bad season to the level that I'm willing to pay more than half his salary just to get him out of here. Now, are there other options that could pop to the table that could change my mind? I'm still very curious what the belief is in the future of Justin Crawford right here. It feels like it has to be next year that he at least receives an opportunity, but I kind of felt that way coming into this season, that this could be the Justin Crawford call-up year, especially when there was such a weakness in the outfield for most of the season before the trade deadline there, and it never came to fruition. So I'm not sure what the exact vision is there. Harrison Bader, another guy that is a free agent in technicality here. There is a mutual option, and my expectation is likely that Bader will opt out to this, that his market is hot, and I do think he can get a higher number than that $10 million that is currently on the table from the mutual option perspective, but we'll see how that shakes itself out as well. Max Kepler opening campaigning that he wants to come back. I don't think that is exactly going to play itself out, although I do give Kepler a ton of respect for battling through a really tough start to the season and becoming a somewhat important part of this postseason run. That he was a good player when push came to shove, did his job for the most part there. I still wouldn't re-sign Kepler by any means, but did want to give him a little bit of credit there. So as we circle back to this, and I get the immediate reactionary takes of there has to be big changes, there has to be new faces in this clubhouse here, it's really hard to actually map out a pathway of where this directly improves this Phillies team. Change for the sake of change is not a good thing in the current context of this team. Change to improve this roster is a good thing, but you have to find the pathway to getting there. Could this be an Alec Boehm conversation? Get him out of third base, bring in maybe an Alex Bregman or something like that? Is it bringing over one of these Japanese sluggers or our guy Murakami over there? Could it be a Pete Alonso situation? There's a lot of options on the table, but it is not simple as let's just get these big time deals out of here and all of a sudden this roster is going to be better. You need your good players to be good players. That the bat's not coming alive when the moment mattered most. That is why this team lost this year. That is the fact of the matter. And Bryce Harper was a part of that, but he was not the entire equation. So there's been a lot of reckless things said about this Phillies team in these past couple weeks. I understand the pain is still there. I understand the frustration is still there. But let's not rush to burn everything to the ground and start over, because they are way closer than a lot of teams could envision being in this current state. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. Am I missing anyone from the big name contracts there? Because I'm pretty certain that I am not, but I do not understand who Ruben Amaro could remotely be referring to there. Trey Turner and Bryce Harper are not going anywhere, for better or for worse. Could this be a Casty alluding to that? Who knows what the case may be, but we'd love to hear your thoughts in the comment below. Appreciate you guys tuning in this video as always. Make sure you're hitting that subscribe button if you have not just yet. We are in the dog days of the offseason to an extent. Things will be heating up once the World Series subsides and the offseason begins to take its full form. So we're going to be tapped into every single aspect of that, and the best way by keeping up is by hitting that subscribe button before. Make sure you're doing that. Drop a like on this video. Give me your thoughts in the comments. I'll be back to talk with you next time. Peace.